All right, so let's take a look at this, and we'll go through it and comment as we go.
Focus on what your position is and the vice president's position as well. I want to talk about abortion too, because this came up at the debate. It's been a winning argument for Democrats on many ballots, but I want to clarify what the law is there in Minnesota. Abortion Finder, a website that helps women find access, says abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that
this
law
is a
goes
woman's
far
right
beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But
wait,
look, this is a. Let's agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her health care providers. The situation we have.
He's not answering the question. And I actually did not know that about Roe v. Wade. If you're not familiar with going through Roe v. Wade, there was a trimester. It was different. The rules for the first trimester different than the second trimester, different than the third trimester. If he really believes this is why I say just stand on what you stand on. Walz, you signed it. If what she's saying is true, just answer her question. You haven't even, and if it's not true, then say no. If there's no limit through 9 months. If there's no term limit, then just say that and say exactly why and say, hey, we're standing on it. We're putting the decision on women. But he's trying to say the second part without acknowledging the first part and just trying to hide behind, oh, yeah, well, we just wanted to get Roe v. Wade back. But that's not what you signed into law. You could have taken the exact principles from Roe v. Wade and implemented them in your state. That's not what you did. You did something different. So why are you not standing on that? That's what raises red flags for me. That's when I start thinking like, damn, you're not even willing to stand on what you stand on. Stand on it. You stand on what you stand on so we can have a real conversation and figure out the best way to move forward. He won't even answer that. I'll go back and let you guys, you tell me if you got an answer.
It's very clear. It does not. Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that
this
law
is a
goes
woman's
far
right
beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion. But
wait,
look, this is
what has been debunked. He just said that's been debunked. If you really listen to some of these conversations, like that's why I have to keep going back. He just said that has been debunked. What are you saying has been debunked? Let's go back. And matter of fact, I should have showed you this graphic. I'm not sure if you guys saw it.
On abortion in Minnesota based on how
abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in the pregnancy you are. If that's what you believe in, stand on it. Tell us why. But if that's not, then it's like you're showing us that you have an issue with it by not being able to just stand on it. And it happens on both sides. J.D. Vance, if you believe, now, of course, you're the vice president. So if you believe in a federal ban, and if that's what you stand on, and that's what you said before, then stand on it and say that. Now, if you say, hey, I looked at things, my personal outlook on certain things may differ from President Trump on this particular thing, but I support him putting it in the state's decision to where he took it out of the federal, took it from a federal level, got rid of Roe v. Wade and said, hey, your states decide. Now, if that's what you support, then say that you support it. But all this indirect conversation, all this politically correct, all this scared, walking on eggshells, trying to manipulate people with all the word salads, all it does is make somebody like me, I don't know about y'all, but it makes somebody like me just say like, nah, they lying.
How far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that
this
law
is a
goes
woman's
far beyond
right
Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But wait,
look, this is
he's saying that it's been debunked on multiple occasions. They just put up the law. I'm telling you, just go Google Roe v. Wade right now. It's a trimester, like it's broken down by trimesters. What you just saw in Minnesota law, Why don't you just say it's been debunked? What's been debunked? Are you saying that what she just put up on the screen is wrong? So then say that.
I agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her healthcare providers. The situation we have is when you don't have the ability of healthcare providers to provide that, that's where you end up with a situation like Amanda Zaworski in Texas, where they are afraid to do what's necessary. This doesn't change anything.
Extremism. Using exceptions to prove rules. You're using the exceptions of certain instances where women have been even killed because they got to go to a different state to get certain treatment. But what you never address is that the majority of women, because when you just say there's no, like, we all know how this goes. A lot of us grew up looking at abortions like, yo, it's just, hey, I wasn't being responsible. You could always have an abortion. Let's be real. That's why a lot of people look at abortions differently when they're in their teens and 20s compared to when they get older. You got kids making decisions about terminating a pregnancy at ages where they can't even buy a drink. They're not even responsible enough to have a glass of alcohol. But they're responsible enough to make a decision about their pregnancy. So you can sit here and feel courageous and feel like you're fighting the good fight by saying, hey, we just leave it all up to the women. But in all actuality, you can't feel that there shouldn't be a framework, or you can't be that naive to think that even though you're bringing up extreme examples of, like the Hadley, I believe if I'm messing up her last name, then my apologies. But the young lady Hadley, I'll just say Hadley, who was 12 years old, got raped by her stepfather, I believe. I may be wrong. But then she had an abortion. That's an extreme situation. Most people, that's not the reason why they're having abortions. Most people are having abortions because they just don't feel like having a kid for financial reasons, or just because, I don't trust the father. Well, you trusted him to have sex with you, and don't tell me the condom broke. Like, that's not a real, like, stop it. So I just, this is just very disingenuous. I'd rather have somebody who talks to me straight, who I may see the world totally different from, rather than people who just give me word salad and just, you don't know where they stand. They're so slippery, you don't know where they stand.
It puts the decision back on to the woman, to the physicians. And we know that this is simply something to be brought up to be very clear. Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
Wait, he
and
has
again,
said that
we don't see this as a winning campaign.
that he will not sign an.
You're lying, bro. You're lying, bro. You know what's so funny? They believe Trump when it's convenient for them to believe Trump. It's like Trump said he was going to be a dictator on day one. Okay. Trump also said that he did not want a federal abortion ban. Trump also said that he's not in support. He's not aligned with Project 2025. That's not it. But y'all continue to say it. So you believe that you want us to believe when Trump says he's going to be a dictator on day one. You want us to believe that Trump is going to create a purge when he's talking about having harsh policing for an hour. You want us to believe all these things that, oh, he said it. But then don't believe the other things that he said. But you're going to let us know which things that we should believe that he's saying compared to the things that we shouldn't believe, right? We can trust you to be that filter for us, right? Never mind the fact that you're running against him, but we can still trust you, right? Okay.
A national abortion ban. Are you calling that just, it's a flat out lie?
Yes, of course. And Senator Vance has in the past said so too. Now, look, they may see this as an election issue. We see it as a right of women to make their own bodily decisions. And that's what the states like my state have the ability to put that in. States like Georgia force women to cross the border, and then we have a death of Amber Thurman.
It's not. I don't understand why people say their own bodily decisions. Like, I just really don't understand how you can. How is it your own decision when the women that I talk to that have had abortions, the reason why they say it's such an emotional, outside of just the physical can be tough as well, but it's such an emotionally difficult thing because it's not just you. You're terminating, do I be sensitive about how I'm saying it, or I just say you're terminating your baby? You're terminating a baby. It just is what it is. And maybe if we had more honest conversations about it, then people like myself growing up wouldn't look at it as casually. And if it happens to our significant other, our girlfriends, whoever, maybe we would have more of an appreciation and understanding for what they're actually going through, rather than us just thinking like, nah, you have an abortion, like you good. I don't hear them saying that, hey, abortions are things that are going to impact women in a very serious way. We don't know the mental health. We don't know the physical health that it's going to impact them. It could limit their chances of having pregnancies in the future. So if we were just realistic about that, and you had somebody like Tim Walz or Kamala Harris saying like, hey, we understand that we want to have the ability to have abortions for all these examples that you always hear us talking about. However, people need to take some responsibility and accountability for themselves and not just be having these willy-nilly abortions just because as a reason because they don't like the way condoms feel. I guarantee you that more people, if people were keeping it real, I heard that more about friends that I had growing up or different people that I heard growing up having kids. It was more, I don't like the way condom. Why didn't you use a condom? I didn't like the way they feel. Well, I bet you would be a lot more responsible if there was a more direct, clear talk on what exactly an abortion was. And instead of referring to it as reproductive rights, you're talking about the right to terminate a baby. Obviously, depending on which stage you believe is a baby, fetus, all those things. But how can something have a heartbeat and you say that it's a woman's body decision? It's only the woman's body impacted. How can there be another being with a heartbeat in a woman's body and we just sit here and say, oh, it's just a woman's body? That's not, you're lying. We're lying to ourselves. We're lying to ourselves. And the reason why I'm annoyed is because a lot of these lies to ourselves, I told them myself when I was younger, and I know a lot of other people did as well. Now you got us telling, in maybe some cases, women that weren't even like really equipped to have these conversations, and us now pressuring women to have abortions because we don't want to have kids. And of course, the women can do it sometimes too. It's just, we're just not being honest. And it goes back to the thing that I said earlier. This is why I hate that this is such a big issue. How can we just not have a more balanced conversation on this? Just a more balanced conversation. Everything is so extreme with it. A more balanced conversation. Federal ban, that's extreme. No terms, that's extreme. Can we figure out something? Can we figure out a way to meet in the middle to preserve as much life, to provide support to people so they don't feel like abortion is just such an easy option to choose because you never know how that's going to impact people? Can we have some type of just agreement with just people being open to not being so extreme and treating it like, no, I'm rooting for the Giants. No, I'm rooting for the Cowboys. These are actually people's lives that we're playing with. We can't just look at it with fanaticism and just be fanatical in one direction. That's the extremism.
So let's be very clear. Trying to cut hairs on an issue on this is not where the American public's at. They want the restoration of Roe versus Wade. Vice President Harris said she would sign it. That's what we'll do when we're elected.
But to be clear, the Minnesota law is far beyond Roe v. Wade. And about the Amber Thurman case in Georgia, her family has, and it's tragic, she is a young mother who left behind a young son. But what her family has said is it was a complication from an abortion pill that she received, and she didn't get proper care when she went to a Georgia hospital, which had multiple opportunities to intervene there. Her own attorney, the family's attorney, says it wasn't the Georgia law, it was the hospitals, what he claims is malpractice, not treating her when she clearly showed up in distress and still had the byproducts of her pregnancy because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
Now, before, I promise you, I don't think I'm gonna be totally honest with y'all. I don't think I've heard his response. I may have listened to it while I was on the plane, falling asleep. I don't think I heard how his response. I can assume how he's gonna respond to Tim Walz. Y'all know I'm not a fan of Kamala. I don't really know much about Tim Walz. Not a fan of Kamala. Not a fan of the Democratic Party. However, what she just presented, that may be true. But I also think that there is another argument to where if you do have such harsh laws for people, for certain doctors, like I work in the healthcare industry. Doctors, as much as they take that Hippocratic oath, it's BS for the majority of them. Doctors are doctors to make money. And if you're that's my rule. There's always exceptions. I'm telling you, based on the doctors that I've met with, interacted with, been in the surgery room with, seen them look at that rotator cuff. Yeah, that's not a torn rotator cuff. Yo, there's nothing wrong with that knee. They don't have a torn meniscus. They don't have a torn ACL. Y'all just opened up the knee, went in there, cut just so you can call it a surgery. So therefore you can write it out as a code and get reimbursed a certain amount from the insurance companies. Let's be real. That happens more often than not. And if a doctor's telling you that it doesn't happen more often than not, then I would be a little bit skeptical of that particular doctor. We know how this works. It's like any other industry. If I sell sandwiches, I may not be telling you that, yo, these cold cuts are unhealthy. They're going to cause a lot of health issues down the road. You're probably going to die earlier if you eat them consistently. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to sell you a sandwich so I can put food on my table. That's what happens. But we hold these doctors on such a plateau and has such high regards that we just lose our common sense. So I understand what a lot of Democrats do say when it comes to, and I understand this based on the conversation that I've had with certain women, where it's like, okay, if you have a state that is so harsh and has punishments on conducting abortions, then a doctor would be less likely and may be hesitant to provide certain care where it may save the mother from certain things. And if that care, like the doctors are a little hesitant because they're worried about, hey, I don't want to get in trouble having an abortion. If it goes to the board and they don't deem it as medically necessary, then I can lose my license. Doctors are very much like that, just like any other human beings would be worried about their livelihood. And you could sit here and say, well, you know, I'm a doctor. I have a job to do. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. You're either a fool or you think we're a fool. If we don't think that we're going to that you factor in to your decision what may end up happening with your license, knock it off. Knock it off. So let's keep going.
I think they also indicated that had she not go to North Carolina after the debate the other night, that she would have been in a better position. So look,
I think she also indicated, I actually did hear that. My apologies. I did hear his response. Now that he just said it, I remember recalling, and I remember like being half asleep listening to this and just saying like, what do you mean you don't think? Did she say it or not? Like what was said? You don't think you're taking such a stance on such a serious issue, but now you're talking about you don't think or you think?
Because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
I think they also indicated that had she not go to North Carolina after the debate the other night, that she would have been in a better position. So look, these are the situations you're going to get into when you take this decision and put it in the hands of politicians like Donald Trump rather than women and their doctors. We trust women, we trust doctors, and we know the outcomes of that are.
Foolish statement. We trust women. We trust women. And this is why I really hope ladies take a more serious stance about this. You're talking about you trust women. A lot of these women, a 34-year-old women, you think if they look back and ran into their 17-year-old selves, 20-year-old selves, 30-year-old selves, that they would trust them and the decisions that they make? But you as a grown man, gray hair, and somebody who sets policy, you're going to tell me that we trust women? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, maybe you didn't go to high school. Maybe I don't know where you grew up. A lot of women are just having abortions and having a number of them for reasons that have nothing to do with the things that he's mentioning. But these are the things that he's actually building his foundation with. You're building your foundation off of extreme examples and trying to convince us that that's a good enough reason to have extreme policies. And both sides do it, but I'm addressing Tim Walz right now.
Better.
Okay, let's clarify more changes that you signed in Minnesota as well. Several things were repealed with respect to reporting infants who may have survived an abortion attempt. Language that used to be part of the statute was taken out. We'll put this on the screen so people can see. It used to require medical personnel to, quote, preserve the life and health of the born alive infant. That language has been repealed. It's no longer part of the law. Also struck from the law was language about reporting infants that are born alive, what treatment they receive, and whether they live or die. Why was it important to you to get that protection out of the law?
Minnesota law aligns with every other case of what physicians are required by their ethical responsibilities. And so it changed nothing other than aligning with all care that physicians provide in any circumstance for any medical case. And so it's alignment.
All right, we're going to move on.
As it's always been.
We're going to move on. 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 We can't listen to that entire video. So all right, what we want to move on to is Mayorkas. It's Dak. Just want to thank you for checking out our video and visiting the OG Network. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure that you give us a like. And if you're looking to join a community of inspired individuals striving for purposeful abundance, subscribe. And if you're feeling real generous, share the video with some friends and family. All right, I'll see y'all soon. Ew.